Hello and welcome back to the Art Channel, and this week we're going to be discussing a new exhibition that's just opened at the Marian Goodman Gallery in London of work by Thomas Struth, the German art photographer. And Thomas Struth was born in 1954 and has built a reputation for taking rather extraordinary detailed photographs that investigate architecture and place. He's made a series of family portraits, and perhaps most famously a series taken within art museums and monuments, whereby he turns the camera onto the visitor and the audience in order to explore our relationship with art itself.
This exhibition consists of, on the face of it, two series of photographs. They are very different, but they are hung together. So they're not hung side by side, they are intermingled. There is a series of photographs that were taken in Israel and Palestine as part of a project with other photographers. And then there are a series of images of amazing, mysterious bits of technology from a very high-tech lab in California, in Pasadena. And you would think that they seem, they feel very different, but they are hung together. And Struth talks about the idea of obsession. What links the two series is this idea of human obsession. Our obsession with technology, what it can do, fetishizing machinery, and then the idea, sadly, that the Israelis and Palestinians continue to be obsessed with war, with conflict.
So we're going to talk about a series of some particular examples, and the first piece I wanted to start with was the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Of course, one of the key sites of Christian faith, built over reputedly where Jesus was buried. And if you've been there, of course, you will understand that it is shared and separated amongst various Christian denominations. And it's notorious for a site for being a place of conflict within Christianity. But this photograph illustrates the history of that building, this extraordinary eclecticism. There's a series of carved capitals into the stone, which are very beautiful. And you have that dialogue really between kind of Western classical influences and something much more Eastern and indigenous to the Middle East. And there are all of these details really of the ladders and of lattices, the window frames, the working life of that church day to day, but within the frame of hundreds of years of additions and accretions to that building.
But it's an interesting photograph, isn't it? Because it's very seductive, it's beautiful. It's a black and white photograph, it's very grainy, it's unlike some of the other work in the show. I don't know much about the space, I don't know as much as you do, so I don't know the backstory. So when I come to the image, it seems serene, it seems peaceful, it seems a place of harmony. So it belies what's actually going on behind the scenes.
It reminds me of Victorian photography taken by explorers and travellers to the Holy Land in the 19th century, particularly because of that black and white tonality. It sort of locates it in history. So Thomas Struth has turned his eye in the exhibition, in the series, to very particular places that are loaded with history and ideology and conflict, but often people are absent.
Yes, there are a few people. There's a family group and there are a few single figures in the distance in this exhibition, but mostly it's the places we inhabit, the places we build and destroy, sadly. And across the way from the image you've just been talking about is a very beautiful and horrendous image of a Syrian Mosque on the Golan Heights, and it didn't start life as a beautiful building. It's a concrete building. It looks as if it was made very quickly, and it's been destroyed. You can see bits of reinforced concrete. It's full of graffiti. It's not cared for. You can see a landscape through it. But I definitely responded to it as a piece of beautiful abstraction, which left me conflicted. It's a horrible scene, but a beautiful composition.
So it has all those formal qualities. The eyes led into the structure and materiality of effectively a sort of bombed out derelict site. There's a casualty really in the war. and he sets up these juxtapositions between kind of working functional sites and places that had been essentially scarred.
Yeah, yeah, and he talks about the photographs, these particular architectural photographs as sculptures, and also he looks at the machines as sculptures, so I suppose that's something that links across the two series of images.
And he talks too of travelling through Palestine and Israel, looking for places that evoke somehow symbolically and more materially the whole problem of this ongoing conflict and the history of the place. I have to say, I didn't feel as if this series added any more kind of knowledge, or in a sense was able to achieve a new way of thinking about this troubled region. They were quite generic.
Yeah, they are, and I think you're right. We're so used to seeing it, sadly, every night on the news, every weekend in the Sunday papers, that they very easily become hackneyed images, and that's a terrible indictment. That's a terrible reflection on what we see. But you have to, I don't know how you approach that in a different way now. I think we are so sick and tired of seeing these images.
Then we come to an image that's part of photographs taken within very sophisticated laboratories. And he gives us this privileged access to places that normally we don't see. We understand that these places exist, but they're very rarefied and exclusive. They are almost sacred spaces, sacred secular spaces that represent the cutting edge of science, where the most sort of complex experiments take place. And in this image, high harmonic generation spectrometer, we see this intense beam of green light being emitted, and we don't know what's happening in this image. We understand it as some form of laser technology, but there's that fascination that he instills in the viewer.
Absolutely. I mean,
curiosity.
As you said, I mean, I walked across the gallery to see that green light. It's beautiful. You react on a visceral level to a colour like that. Then I get to the picture and I think, gosh, I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't really mind. I'm invited in and I'm pushed out again because I don't understand this technology. But I do understand a painting made with a fantastic sense of composition. There's kind of steel girders which bisect the painting. There are all these kind of wires and tubes which are like brush strokes. And then in the bottom right corner there's this incredible luminous light. And I think it says something about we do revere, we don't understand these spaces, but we hold them in high regard, very high regard.
There is almost a fetish for reverence for these places. And I think Struth is very astutely asking us to consider how particular places and activities are at the apex of human sort of function and activity and inquiry. But it's such a clear contrast with the series made in Israel and Palestine that where human beings can potentially at their worst, locked in conflict, in warfare. And at first when I visited the exhibition I didn't understand how those two subjects naturally fitted together within the same exhibition, but then it gradually became clearer. There's that extraordinary contradiction and paradox, both hope and despair really within the same exhibition.
And I think on a formal level, there really are links. You can look at the street scenes that he shot, you can look at the images of habitations of flats, you can look at these pictures of these bizarre machines, and he's always as well as the politics, as well as the emotional response, he's looking for a composition, and you can see him searching that out, and they are beautifully made, they're beautifully put together, and they slow you down. If you stand in front of them and you figure stuff out, you look at the way they're made, and that's quite an amazing thing to be able to do with a photograph.
In many of the images there are barricades or streets that have been blocked off. We see walls and fences. There's that idea of a kind of territorial division taking place in front of our eyes. What slightly disappointed me too was the absence of people. There's one portrait of a family, but largely these are spaces formally that are not occupied by a kind of human presence in the image. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, they're the spaces that we have inhabited and have destroyed or have abandoned, so they're full of evidence and they're full of sadness, aren't they? But I think you're right, I think they can become generic, and it's quite interesting, because talking about the images of the computers and the machinery, when he showed them to the people who constructed these things, they could tell which of their colleagues had put them together. You know, the way the pipes were wrapped or the things were, you know, so in that way, to us they're generic, but to the people who live in that world, they're very specific. So I think Struth gets us to look very carefully. There are problems with the exhibition, but I think it's quite a brilliant concept to put the two pieces together.
So this exhibition runs through until what date?
June the 6th.
June the 6th at Marian Goodman in London. Thank you for watching the Art Channel. Please do subscribe to the channel, and if you like any of the films, please give us a thumbs up. So goodbye, and see you later.
Yep, see you soon.